welcome everyone to the this deep dive into Trace. Trace is the new monitoring product we're working on here at Bitrise, and yeah, we'll kick things off. So, yeah, welcome. My name is Colin Hemmings. I'm a PM here, a product manager here at Bitrise. I'm a product manager for the Trace product. I've been working in the monitoring space for several years now, so hopefully you can enjoy some of the stuff that we've been working on. So in terms of the schedule for the talk, we don't have a lot of time, so I'll whip through things, but I'll kick things off by giving some background on kind of what we've been working on and why we've been doing it and how we've been approaching things. I'll give you a demo of Trace so you can see exactly what's included, and then there'll be time for Q&A at the end. Regarding the Q&A, as you have questions, you can raise them at the end or raise them as you go along. In the public channel there, you should have instructions on how to ask those questions, and then we'll kind of take time at the end to go through all of those and hopefully answer all your questions as they come up. So what is monitoring? Right, monitoring can mean different things to different people. It can be real user monitoring, it can be analytics, crash reporting, distributed tracing, logs, a vast number of different types of monitoring, and understanding which type of monitoring to use for your application can be a challenge. It really all depends on your domain you're in, the application you're building, and the team that you're working with. But generally, you tend to need more than one of these types of monitoring tool or different types of monitoring for seeing how your application is working. So why build a monitoring tool? There are a lot of monitoring tools already on the market, some really good ones, and why build one? We kind of looked at the kind of space, and to us it felt like there was a gap really for building a monitoring solution that's specifically targeted at teams that mobile DevOps teams, so really focused on the mobile use case. When you look at the different tools that are available, there are some really good tools. They tend to kind of fall into two camps from our perspective. That there's the traditional server monitoring tools. That the server monitoring market has come a long way in the last 5 to 10 years. They tend to be based on that server space, and then they've added mobile monitoring as an extension to that platform, but it's never really been their primary use case. If you look at trying to monitor an application that's running 2 different versions in production at the same time, you can get challenges with that when you're trying to use one of those traditional server monitoring applications. And then in the other camp, you've got now more tools coming in around the mobile space, but there's some really kind of great offerings there. But from the way we see it, there are some limitations in terms of how the mobile development teams are evolving, and there's some kind of advanced functionality which is catered for more on the server tooling, but not really involved in these kind of mobile specific monitoring tools, so that you can really track how things are going on and monitor and share that information amongst the team. Here at Bitrise, we've always been a mobile-first organization, focused on the mobile use case and really trying to help mobile development teams build better quality applications for their audiences. And so when we approach this problem, we really try to look at what are our users trying to achieve when they approach building their applications and what they want to monitor. And this is the approach we take for all product development. And so we can follow that through really for monitoring. So on that note, to kick things off, I have a quick survey. So if I switch over, it's a bit wordy, but okay. So if you have, which of the following features or benefits do you look for when you're selecting a monitoring solution? So if you guys could take a couple of minutes to really just answer this question, it gives us an idea of what kind of benefits people look for when they're selecting. Okay, that's great. So I'll flip back to the slides I've got. So what do users want? You might think asking people about this type of domain, mention crashes, or they want to track the crashes or eliminate the bugs that are occurring, to track performance issues as they're coming up for their users. The way that we like to approach things, you might have seen this quote before. It's quite common in the product space. I don't want a quarter-inch drill, I want a quarter-inch hole. We always try to take things a little bit further step back from that. And actually, why are you looking for that hole? We're actually looking to put a picture up on the wall. So we always try to go a little bit deeper and ask questions why, and really get to the root cause of what it is users are trying to do with the product or any potential product we're working on. And when we kind of posed these questions and we really investigated what was going on amongst the teams, we kind of got really good audience, and they kind of gave us these particular insights that really they're looking to build great products. They're looking to keep their users happy. They want to move quickly. It's a competitive domain, building mobile applications. They need to iterate on their products to keep the users happy, and they're looking to deliver value. Monitoring doesn't really fall into that. It's a tool that they use to help achieve these objectives. So we like to keep these end user objectives in mind when we're building any product, and the same goes for building monitoring. So we take an outcome-based approach when tackling these problems. And when we kind of ideated around that, we need to come up with these kind of 3 pillars to how we're going to approach building monitoring. Obviously, at the root is we need to detect when there are problems. Obviously, as a base use case, you're looking to understand when crashes are occurring. That tends to be the most common for mobile applications. Now we're seeing more monitoring around the performance space as well. So you've got your application deployed to tens of thousands, millions of users. Understanding how it's performing for those users can be quite a challenge. Being able to visualize and process all that data can be a challenge. But once we've got that in, we also need to then look at assessing the impact of those problems. A crash for one user, is that a higher priority than a performance issue that's affecting all of your users? Being able to understand the effect these issues have on the users and how many users in which particular domains and markets is fundamental to being able to prioritize this work. What you want to do is pick off the most high priority ones first, so that you can add value as quickly as possible and kind of iterate through those problems and fix them. And then we come to tracing and kind of a root cause analysis. And this is the area that we're really most excited about, is getting to the root cause of what the problem is. You could have a performance problem and understand it's happening on certain devices. You can have a crash report and understand exactly what line of code it's occurring in. But then that doesn't always give you enough information to be able to reproduce the problem, understand what it is, get a fix out, test that in the same scenario again, and deploy that fix to your users. So what is Trace? So why don't I show you? So this is Trace. This is Trace we've been working on for a little while now. I'll walk you through the high-level components of the product, and then maybe talk about a few of the advancements that we're adding to the application in the near future as well. So to kick things off, we've got performance monitoring. So when we looked at performance monitoring, we really, again, wanted to get to the root cause, the actual outcomes that users are looking to achieve with a product like this. And what you really kind of need to distill it down into is what are the kind of the core KPIs that you're looking at for your mobile application, what's important to measure to understand how well or how badly your application is performing in the wild for your users. And so the philosophy and the approach that we had to that for performance monitoring is we look at consumption, responsiveness, and stability-based metrics. And so at the top here, we've got a set of stability-based metrics. And what we're looking at is how robust and how stable the application is. So this is how many errors it's been generated across your install base, how many crashes are occurring across your install base, network errors, and there'll be more types of errors that we'll be tracking as well. Responsiveness that we're looking at, generally how snappy your application feels. The snappier it feels and the more responsive it is for your users, the better user experience that they will have. So with that, we're measuring a bunch of latency metrics that can be startup time, network latency, screen transition times, and things like that. And then after that, we've got consumption. And so consumption is looking at fundamentally the amount of resource your application is taking up on the underlying device. This tends to lead on to an understanding of how much battery drain your application is taking up, how much data it's using, things like that. If your application is consuming a lot of energy on the device and draining the battery quite quickly, it won't be too long before users will uninstall the application. So again, all these metrics kind of tie into the general user experience and helping our users build these better quality applications. So what we've got on this page is an overview dashboard for performance. And so this gives you a high-level overview of those specific metrics across all of your users. And the way that we approach this is we show the metric and we break it down by a property of the device reporting that data. So by default, we'll tend to use the application version. So you can see a trend over time as how things are varying by application version. But you can change that to any other device property. So you might want to change it to device type, for example, and see a breakdown across the different device types, or network, for example. And this allows you to do that correlation and comparison. What you might be doing is working on a new version of the application. So you want to specifically drill down into that particular version. And so we allow you to filter down. So what we're doing is filtering the underlying sessions that are returning this data, and then allowing you to kind of break down from that perspective to see what's going on. And this is really useful to be able to inspect certain subsets of devices and generally explore the data. Obviously, depending on your install base, this could be a lot of different users, and you need to be able to navigate the data in a fairly involved way. So when you've noticed an issue, how do you kind of take things from there? So if there was an issue with the performance metrics and the CPU usage, for example, we can see an overview of how these different versions are performing. We've got the min, max, and average across the entire install base. And we might want to drill into that to get a better understanding of how that's working. And so one of the challenges we found is how do you go from that potentially a large scale of users and refining it down to find the specific users that are having problems and the unique aspects to their sessions and devices that are reporting those problems. So the approach we have is we break that data down for you and show you how it's looking across the different session properties. And this allows you to kind of quickly visualize and manually spot outliers across that set of devices. So here, for example, I can see this type of network has registering a high. Sessions of this type of network are registering a high CPU. I can keep drilling down into this. So what that does is actually updates my filter, and I can then further refine that selection down to look at how those sessions of this particular operating system version are performing in a particular country, for example. And what we're looking to do is really further refine that down to find the specific subset of devices. This gives us an idea of how many devices it's occurring on. So here we report the number of sessions that match this filter. And then what we really want to do is drill into those sessions and actually see, okay, what was going on that might have caused this potential problem. And so this brings us into the more of the root cause analysis aspect. So what we see here, and this is an area that we're looking to really heavily evolve in the future, is you can see the properties of the session, which is useful information. You can see the performance metrics of the session, which again is useful information, but really being able to see a timeline of what happened in the user session. So you can see which pages they went to, what the different interactions and network requests that were being made in the app, in the build up to any potential problem. And so we'll be adding more interactions and events as they occur. This solution came about based on users trying to replay the same scenarios, and they would do that via screen recordings and screenshots and things like that. Whilst they can be useful, although a little fairly intrusive, they are quite expensive operations. So you tend to have a fairly narrow window of time that you can cover. So because we're keeping it in this more efficient format, you can actually see the interactions across the entire lifespan of the session. So for example, your crash or your performance issue might have happened fairly near to the end of the session, especially if it causes the application to crash. But the actual root cause might have been disabling Bluetooth or network access or something like that. And being able to see those events and seeing what the user did, whether they went to a particular page and clicked a certain button, allows you to first build up an understanding. It gives you some set of steps to reproduce the problem, and then it also gives you a set of steps to test the problem after you have produced a fix. And so what we find is this is really going to help people to reduce that time it takes to reproduce the problem and get a fix out to their users. So that's it really, a high level for the performance monitoring aspect. Again, I can page through these other sessions as well. Another component of the platform that we're releasing as well is crash monitoring. We believe in the kind of performance monitoring aspect, but having crash reports is quite important to mobile app developers. So when you integrate Trace, we'll also capture crash reports, convert them into a human readable format. So looking up the specific simple information, so the line numbers and function names, etc. And then we group those as well. So on the actual list screen, you'll see all of the different types of issues that are occurring. So then you can see the wood for the trees. You can see the different issues that you have in the application and work on fixes for those. So if I go into a specific crash, actually I'll take a step back. In terms of this list, we give you the high level grouping information as well, so you can make an assessment fairly quickly on this particular issue. So you have the number of occurrences, the number of users that are being affected, the number of app versions that are returning this particular issue as well as the last seen time to give you an understanding of how relevant this issue still is, and the status that has been assigned to this particular type of crash. When you go into the grouping of the crash, you can then obviously see the exception details and the aggregate statistics that you see on the previous screen. But it also allows you to navigate the individual instances of a crash. So you can see the session properties for that particular crash. Again, you've got the fully kind of symbolicated human readable stack trace for this crash, as well as we record the thread state as well and return that back. As part of this, you can then change the status. So once you understand what's going on and release a fix, you can change the status of that crash. What we're also doing with this crash reporting is linking that back through to the session page that I showed earlier. So that session page will evolve so that you can link from your individual crashes through into the session and then see where those crash events were occurring on the timeline. So you know which screen the user was in, and gives you an idea of kind of their journey through the application, and again help you to replay and give you that extra kind of vital context to fix the issue. Yeah, as I mentioned, we also have the query properties. What we endeavor to do is keep these fixed across the application. So one thing that can be quite annoying is if you set up a filter, you're looking at a particular type of device or set of devices, and then you jump to a different screen and you completely lose your filter. We have changed that so that you can actually, we would keep those in place as you transition between screens. So the filter's so strict on this one that there's only actually one type. And so then I can transition between the different screens. I can go back again and the filters stay in place. So you're always in the same context until you actively change that. We will be adding further enhancements for monitoring around network monitoring and things like that as well. But that's pretty much it for the Trace product. as it is at the moment, and we'll be releasing this fairly shortly. And as I said, we'll be evolving this to provide an awesome monitoring application. So let me quickly jump back to this. Yeah, one of the kind of key parts of Trace is our integration. Obviously, as part of the Bitrise environment, setup is super simple. All you need to do to set up Trace is add the Trace SDK to your workflow before the build part of your workflow. Then we will add our SDK as part of that step and configure it all, get it up and running. That includes collection of crash reports and publishing of symbol files, and that's all you need to do. We will be expanding this SDK so that you can have more manual control over those things if you'd like us to inject it, but you want to specify which traces we record, which metrics we record. We'll be adding that. And we're also open sourcing the SDK as well on the product. Kind of integrity and transparency are kind of a key driver for us. And you being able to see kind of what code we're adding into your application to be able to collect this information is really kind of important to us. In terms of availability, so the private beta is available now. So what we'll be doing is all users that attended the webinar, we'll be sending out an invite next week so that you can get access to the Trace product. Again, it's in private beta. We like to build products that solve users' problems and provide a lot of value. So we're releasing it as private beta to get more of your feedback, and so we can iterate and evolve. The first private beta will be for the performance monitoring. Then we'll be adding crash reporting quite soon after that, with Android support following in September. And then, as I mentioned, this is kind of just really the foundations of where we're looking to go with this product. So adding network tracking because of our integration with source control, that we can then tell you information about the issues that are occurring, like if it was occurring on a particular version, what change set was for that particular version and who was involved in it. Again, it helps build up that context so that you can get the right people around a particular problem, get things fixed as quickly as possible. And anomaly detection is a neat area that we're looking to move into as well. There are some kind of algorithms that we can apply to the data. As I mentioned, this is a really big data problem as you move into larger install bases. If you look at just the number of Android devices that are available on the market across all the different versions of the API, you soon run into billions of different permutations of data, and it's too overwhelming for humans to look through and find the problems. So we're looking to add algorithms to detect those things, so we can highlight anything that looks out of the ordinary and kind of provide you insights so that you can drill down into that even further. That was what I had for that one. So now I'll switch over to Q&A, and I'll try and answer as many of your questions as possible. I appreciate you kind of sticking with us, and I'll switch over to that. Okay, so the first question I've come across is, what is ANR? And then there's one that follows as well, to clarify OOM. That's a application not responsive, and OOM is out of memory. These are particular errors that can occur in your mobile applications that cause them to either become unresponsive to the user and not actually crash, or they could result in out-of-memory issues that can cause your application to crash as well. Those are things that users can want to track to understand what problems they have in the application. How much data do you need before it is visible in the Trace plugin? I'm not quite sure what the question's alluding to. You don't need really a minimum set of data. We kind of record metrics and interactions at kind of periodic intervals and publish them back. So there's not really a minimum set. and we'll show you the kind of, when you're looking at a large volume of different users, we'll show you the minimum and maximum of those, so it allows you to see the outliers and any potential problems. Yeah, that's as best as I can answer. If I didn't answer that well enough, then kind of follow up, and I'll try to dig into that a bit more. I think we'll have a couple more because we're kind of running close on time. How do you get the data? Is there an SDK to install on the app to track? Yes, so that's how we do it, exactly. So for both iOS and Android, there's an SDK. Again, our approach is to be as simple as possible, but allow the flexibility for you guys to control how that works. So again, it's designed to be turnkey, so you add the step to your workflow, and we'll take care of adding that SDK into your application. But we also allow you to manually install that via the different dependency managers, or you can pull the sourcing as you'd like. Again, the SDK will be open source, so you can inspect to understand what we're doing there, and it will eventually come with custom configuration. So if you want to manually add the SDK and control which particular interactions that we track and which particular metrics, there'll be documentation on how you do that. And that's, if you want a real full control over that, and not so concerned with the simple setup and getting up and running. Let me scroll down a bit more to. Okay, so I'll cover this one off, and then I'll try and get back to your other questions and publish those in some medium. Do you have plans to provide a granular networking APM tool similar to New Relic? So I didn't cover it in the demo, but we've got a placeholder for the actual network monitoring aspect. So yes, we will be adding network monitoring, so you'll be able to see the network dependencies your application has, how often they're being called, what the general latency is for those, and then when there are problems with any of those calls, you can then look at the actual payloads for those and understand what the payload was and how what was going on there, and then also everything linking back to the session, so that you can see, okay, this network request generated this session at this particular point in time. So if you have a malformed request, for example, and that's because of some of the request payload is being generated by some user interactions, then being able to understand how that was potentially built up as part of that. The network monitoring is fairly involved, and obviously we need to be careful of the payloads that are being transmitted and allow redaction of certain information if there's sensitive information there. So that takes a little bit more time to finish up that piece of functionality. But yeah, that's definitely on our roadmap for monitoring network interactions. So that was, we're kind of really over time now, but again, I'll get a copy of all of these questions, and I'll try and answer them as best as possible, and get the answers back to you in some form. And but yeah, I appreciate everyone joining the webinar. We're super excited about what we're working on. We can't wait to get it out, and we really kind of appreciate the if you guys get the opportunity to try it out and provide us feedback. Again, we're looking to build the best possible solution, and that kind of to do that, we need to build an application that is going to be valuable and solve the problems that you have. So yeah, all feedback we get is incredibly valuable. So thanks for your time. Have a great weekend, and hopefully I'll speak to some of you soon on Slack or however. Thank you.